Are you looking for new books to read? Do you like finding a new special author? Are you tired of the same old books from the same old authors? Well then, welcome to Discovered Wordsmiths, a podcast where you can hear from fantastic new authors. Join Stephen Schneider as he finds and talks to authors you may not know, but authors that have worked hard to write great new books. Hear about their book and why you should check it out. So sit back and listen to today's Discovered Wordsmith.
All right. Well, this morning I've got David Kelly. David, how are you doing today?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Good. Nice and, I comb my hair, I told you. You said you got yours trimmed just for the podcast. I love that.
Yeah.
So, David, let's find out a little bit about you. Tell everybody where you live, what you like to do besides writing, just some of your background.
So I'm originally from England. I moved to Canada many years ago now, and I'm now a Canadian citizen. I spent a lot of time working in IT, initially as a developer and then later on as a project manager and manager. That's a very stressful area of work. So I'm glad to say that I don't do that anymore. I started writing sort of seriously when I got a job which involved a long commute on the train, and I wanted to do something on the train, and I'd always wanted to write, so I thought I'd use that opportunity to try and write a book, which I did. It was terrible. It was never published. It never will be published. But it was enough to kind of like hook me on the idea of actually doing this more seriously, So I tried my hand at a couple of others. After that, again, I wasn't really too happy about like the quality that I got. And I spent a lot of time just trying to learn about how to write and so on, kind of like develop my skills and what have you. Wrote quite a few short stories in an attempt to kind of like learn faster. And then eventually I started writing what turned out to be my first novel. And that was actually finished while I was laid up after some rather serious medical issues.
I've heard other authors say, I had an operation and I was off work and I wrote, or I had an accident and I had to take off work and I wrote. And I think that's
Yeah.
a impetus.
Yeah, I had a partial foot amputation,
Ouch.
and they were actually talking at one time of removing my lower leg.
So they took your hair instead. I don't
So
know.
they took my hair instead. Yeah. Luckily they left part of my foot, but took my hair.
Right.
But while I was recovering from that, I was literally kind of like laid up in bed for like a year, and that's when I finished the first of my novels that I released. And so the first one took me kind of around, 20 years, 15 years, 20 years, something like that.
So like a page a
Um,
month.
yeah, something like that with all the stress of a full-time job and everything. And then after doing that one, I was still pretty much laid up. And so I finished the next book in like 6 months, and I've been rolling ever since.
Nice. So let me jump back real quick. Why did you move from England to Canada?
But I had actually, unfortunately, some of them are dead now, but I had a few uncles who moved over to Canada in the 60s. And when I was a young child, one of them came back to visit in England, and I basically sat at his feet for 2 weeks listening to all of these tales of life in the wilderness of Canada as a fisherman on Hudson's Bay and that kind of thing. And it just planted this idea in my head of, like, wow, that sounds incredible. And I didn't do much about it for a while. But then after I met my girlfriend, who's now my wife, I kind of decided I really wanted to try and make that move. And so we came over here on vacation. And I'd been before and fallen in love with it, but not done anything about it. She came over with me the second time and equally fell in love with it. And we went back home and put in our application for immigration kind of the day we got back.
Nice.
And we moved here and we've loved it, ever since.
So you mentioned you wrote while traveling to your job. What do you do?
At the time, I was a project manager, IT project manager.
Okay.
So I had a 2 hour commute every day on the train. And so I wasn't going to just sit there wasting that time. And I certainly wasn't going to work because if I worked, I wasn't going to get paid for it. So I
Right.
thought I'll do something for myself.
Nice. Okay. So let's talk about your book. So your first book took several years. Your second book you got done in a few months. Are they in a series?
The first series I wrote was the Joe Ballon series. There's four books in that now. The second series, that is the one I'm currently working on, is a spin-off of that using one of the characters from that original series, but focusing on him rather than the character Joe Ballon, which was the center of the first book.
Okay. So tell us about the newest couple books, the newest series. What are they called? Tell us a little bit about them without giving away any spoilers.
So the latest books, the Logan's World series. That's the series name, and the first book is Kwelengsen Storm, and the second book, which is coming out in a few months, is Kwelengsen Dawn. Um, the books focus around an engineer who's on like the first discovered kind of habitable exoplanet. So basically, they've found this world that supports life, and they've sent people out there to settle it. And he's part of that settlement. He's like the chief engineer for the new settlement. And then the bad guys invade because they want it, and everything kind of like comes crashing down.
Nice. So we were talking a little bit. Tell everyone the title, where you came up with the title of the book.
So the title comes from Salish, which is a Native American language. And the reason it came from that is because the actual main character is Native American, and his heritage is from the Salish people. And the in the story world, the idea is that when he first sees this world, he sees this continent that looks a little bit like an eagle, and so he names it after the eagle that he sees, this landmass. And in Salish, the word for eagle is Kwelengsen, and so that's where the planet gets its name.
Okay. Did the Salish extend up into Canada, or why did you choose that tribe to for your main character?
The reason I chose that was because I really liked Chief Dan George, who was a fabulous native, excuse me, Native American actor. He was in several Western movies with Clint Eastwood, and I just loved his character. And as a kind of tribute to him, I made my character Salish because that was his background as well.
Nice. Yeah, I love where people get inspiration and influences from all over. Uh, so I like that. That's pretty cool. Uh, what books would you say that are out there that are similar to yours?
That's a difficult one. I think everybody has their own style, but probably the Expanse series, maybe The Martian. I like to kind of like have it keep things as real as possible or realistic as possible. Um, but I like them to be fast paced and full of action. So I think those are probably the kind of like closest at the moment.
Okay, good. Yeah, that gives people an idea. If you like these books, check this one out.
Hmm.
So, when you started writing your other series, this one, what besides a 2 hour commute where you wanted to write on the train, what made you want to start writing at all?
I was a very very big reader when I was young. I literally devoured several libraries full of books. I went through a phase where I would literally read anything. I didn't kind of really sort of pick and choose. It's like if I saw something and I hadn't read it, I'd just read it, which meant that I ended up reading a lot of very diverse things, you know. Um, so I always kind of like had that fascination with books. And as I was growing up, when I was in school and what have you, every kind of like opportunity I had when we were doing things like English lessons, I would always try and kind of like twist the assignments so that I ended up writing something fictional. Um, so I always kind of wanted to do that, but I was not really encouraged to do that. Like my teachers and everything, they kind of said, oh, there's no point kind of like doing that kind of stuff. You're better off doing something more technical. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Um, so yeah, you're better off doing something, kind of more technical and more useful to society. Um, so I kind of like abandoned the idea, but it always kind of like stuck with me, hanging around in the back of my mind that I wanted to try and do this at some point. And so eventually, yeah, it was just, as I say, I had this commute and I needed something to do. And I just turned back to that sort of childhood dream and thought, yeah, I'm going to give it a go.
Nice.
You
I
know?
think there's must be some, to not everybody, but a large percentage of computer IT people. Uh, I'm computer IT. You are. I've talked to multiple authors that are computer IT, and maybe I'm just noticing it because that's my field. But it seems like dealing with computers and the analytical process coding and hardware and all that, that I think sometimes we need that creative outlet and we don't get. That's my theory. But I see a lot of people that are in computers wanting to write.
I agree, actually. I've seen that quite a lot as well. And it's surprising how many times I kind of like get talking to another author or like a graphic artist or something. And it's like, and they say, yeah, I used to work in IT, but I kind of didn't like it. So now I do something else.
Right. Okay. And is your book indie published or traditionally published?
I'm an indie author.
Okay.
So I publish everything myself.
Okay. And um, the books are already out. They're available on Amazon, I assume. Anywhere else that they're available?
Yeah, they're available pretty much every kind of like online retailer. Um, yeah, you should be able to find them like at Barnes and Noble and all those
Okay.
places.
Okay. And the people that have been reading your book, what type of feedback are you getting?
Most people really seem to enjoy it. I've had some very very good responses from readers, and you know I've had people who kind of like said that they've abandoned reading science fiction because they kind of like don't like how it's kind of moved sort of more recently, and they've said, but my books they've like just really kind of like enjoyed them. I've had people who say they don't like to read sci-fi who say, but I love your books, and and I get a lot of read through on the series as well. It's like a lot of people, they'll try the first one and then they keep coming back. So it's like, I get a lot of repeat buys and everything. Um,
Nice.
so overall, it's like it seems to be, received, pretty well, which is obviously, a great relief.
Right, right. And that's a pretty good testament when someone reads one of your books and then goes through to read the whole series, moves on to the
Mm,
next series and keeps going. That right, that says enough right there actually.
mm. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
you said you like to read growing up. I assume you still do. What are some of your favorite books and authors?
Um, I excuse me. I like a lot of classic authors. I kind of grew up reading a lot of Heinlein and Asimov and those kinds of things. I also like to read a lot of noir detective stories. Those are kind of some of my favorites. Sherlock Holmes, all those kind of things. More recently, I'm trying to catch up on the Expanse books. It's like I'm kind of way behind on those. But I'm kind of like starting to pick up on those and read them more because I do enjoy them. They're very good, and it's kind of like interesting as well seeing that they've now been turned into the TV show as well. Kind of stuff. So it's kind of
Right.
interesting to kind of see how they compare as well. Um, and then the other one that I'm hoping to start reasonably soon is the Murderbot series.
Okay. I don't know that
Um,
one.
um, that's um, that's one that catches my attention, and but it's one of these sort of strange things. When you write, it's like actually getting time to read becomes a lot more difficult. Because you're spending all your time writing. It's like this is literally my full time job now, so this is all I do, and so it becomes more difficult to find the time. But I'd never give up reading. It's like I think it's essential. I mean, if you want to be an author, you need to read. So
Right. Yeah. So where you live, are there any favorite bookstores around you?
yes, we have an independent bookstore called Bay Used Books just here in town, which is a treasure trove of kind of everything. I even now after all these years, I can't really walk past a bookstore without kind of being pulled towards it like a black hole. So
Right.
it gets sucked in there. It's like,
Yeah,
oh,
my
I'll
kids
just
and
go
I,
in. I'll just go
my
and
kids and I
have a bit
always
of a look.
visited bookstores when we went on vacation. You just, had to be explore new ones in the towns. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of these things. I mean, I when I was growing up, I didn't have a lot of money, so kind of like used books were kind of like my way of being able to read more. It's like so I used to go into these places and buy books at kind of like crazy prices at the time. I mean it's like they were kind of like 20 pence, so maybe 50 cents or something like that a book, and I'd go in there and come out with sort of like a bag full of 50-cent books, and then I'd just read them.
Right. Right. Yeah. Um, your books, your series, if you had a choice, would you rather see them turned into a movie or a TV show?
I would probably say a TV show. Um, the the I think the stories on my books they're so kind of character based that I think you wouldn't really have the chance to do that and explore that thoroughly in a movie because of the time requirements. So, and now because of the fact that they can do TV shows that actually look almost as good as movies, um, I don't think there's a disadvantage to kind of like running TV series based on books. Uh, it used to be like obviously if you had something that needed a lot of special effects, it had to be a movie because that was the only way you had the budget to do those things. But now it's like the things, the landscape's changed, and I mean, I say if you look at things like the Expanse series, for example, I mean, it's like they do a tremendous job on that.
Yeah. And you starting to see, not starting, but you've been seeing some big name actors doing things on Netflix or Amazon Prime, doing
Yeah,
and movies too. Like we just watched The Atom Project, which if you haven't seen on Netflix, it's worth a watch. It's really fun. And it had some good special effects, but it was better than some movies I've paid $15 to see in the theater. and I
Mm.
got to sit at home and watch it right on Netflix and then go right into watching season 2 of Witcher, so there's a
Mm.
lot of benefits. And I think a lot of people are actually happier to get some show on Netflix or some other streaming service nowadays.
Yeah, me and my wife actually just watched the Adam Project last weekend, and yeah, I agree. It's like it's kind of great to have so much more choice available nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's good and bad. I mean, some of it you kind of watch and you think, maybe not, but you know, there's also some good stuff on there. So yeah.
Yes, I do like it from the story aspect because I've watched several movies where I didn't feel they were as good. And I could
Mm.
evaluate it from a story aspect and say, well, here's why I think it didn't come out as good. So it allows me to practice my story chops,
Mm.
with some things, because always seeing, the best stuff sometimes doesn't help you as much as seeing stuff that's not as good and figuring out why it's not as good.
Yeah,
My thought.
absolutely. And I
So
think as what, sorry,
no, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, I think the only kind of like problem of being an author now is that I've become incredibly critical. It's like, and I see every plot hole going. So you're watching something, and I have to kind of like just zip my lip, because otherwise, like, my wife starts complaining because I'm, oh, this is gonna happen, or that's gonna happen, or that's
Oop,
crazy, that would never happen.
sorry.
That's all right.
Yes, I do the same thing. I'll be watching something, and if I'm not super pulled into it, I might pull out my phone or my tablet and I'm working on a website or whatever. And she's like, "Don't you want to watch this?" I'm like, "Well, this is going to happen. He's going to do this. It's
Mm,
going like this." And she's like, "Shut up."
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
all right. So, David, tell us again if you have a website and the name of your book and where to get it.
Yeah, I have a website. It's very nice and easy. It's my name, so it's davidmkelly.com.
Okay.
And my book, Kwelengsen Storm, is available at the moment. Amazon and pretty much every other online bookstore. The sequel to that is coming out in a few months, which is called Kwelengsen Dawn.
Okay. Great. And before we move on to some author talk, if people are like, I don't know, if you were in an elevator, what would you tell them about why they should get and read your book?
Um, I like to think my books kind of like really sort of like, I try to make them all sort of like one of three things, or three things in total. I like them to be accessible so that people can like pick them up and read them. They don't need to have kind of like a degree in astrophysics. There's science in there, but it's always somewhat in the background. You don't need to understand it to read it. I like to make them realistic, but I also like to keep them fun. So they're very always very fast paced, lots of action and entertainment. The heroes are typically kind of like quite smart. My Balan character, for instance, he's got a very big mouth that gets him into a lot of trouble. Um, Logan Two Feathers in the current books, he's kind of like more subdued, but he's got a very dry sense of humor. So they're very easy to read. People tell me.
Okay, nice. Great. Well, David, I appreciate you sharing your book with us and being on today. Thanks.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Discovered Wordsmiths. Come back next week and listen to another author discuss the road they've traveled, and maybe, sometime in the near future, it might be you.